This is Love Never Fails with your host, Marilyn Redmond. Marilyn shares her experience, strength, and hope, and includes tools to help you find your inner strength for health, healing, and empowerment. So now, please welcome the host of Love Never Fails, Marilyn Redmond.
I am your host, Marilyn Redmond. You are listening to Love Never Fails. We are on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. And I'm so glad to welcome you back to Love Never Fails. We're having a great time here. Every week gets to be really exciting with the topics and our guests that we've had here. It's really going well. And just let everybody know, every Tuesday. Today is Tuesday, isn't it? We have Love Never Fails and 6 o'clock Eastern Time. 3 o'clock Pacific time, which is where I'm at. And I want you to join me every Tuesday afternoon. And today we're talking about tips for healthy relationships. And everybody has relationships, and some of them are problems. And I used to have lots of those problems. And guess what? I have learned how to find healthy relationships through finding out answers I didn't know before. So my experiences have led me to some wisdom and some information I want to share with you today. And it's brought me some new understanding, which I had no clue about when we come into the world without a manual, people. And we have to learn along the way. Isn't that an exciting way to learn, huh? By our mistakes. But we sure do learn by them. And we can come out of them with some answers and understanding we sure didn't have before. I'd like to start out with a quote today from the book called The Vortex, and that's channeled material. Esther Hicks channels Abraham, and he says, "My life is about relationships. You will never find yourself in a point in time when the subject of relationships is not an active part of your now experience. For everything you perceive or notice or know is because of your relationship with something else. Without a comparative experience, you would be unable to perceive or focus any kind of understanding within yourself. Therefore, it is accurate to say that without relationships, you could not exist at all." I found that pretty fascinating. If you have comments or questions for our show today, call in at 866-451-1451. And Abraham's really pointing the finger at me. It's all about what's going on with me that causes my relationships and what I'm sending out to others. So if you have some questions about your relationships, we're here today to hopefully give you some maybe insight what you might do differently. I had to learn to do a lot of things differently. And one of the biggest issues I had when I first came into understanding about this was expectations. Do you have expectations of people in your life? Well, guess what, people? It leads to resentments and anger and frustration, stress. We've been talking about stress on this show. And it can really ruin relationships and friendships. And so if you're in the relationship with somebody for the wrong reasons, your expectations are not going to get met. In fact, your expectations, I'm trying to say it, your expectations are supposed to be met by your relationships. Oh, I heard a groan out there somewhere. Your expectations are for you to take care of your own needs. And whatever they do is their life, and we're to live and let live. And so we're going to have to separate what is our responsibility with our life today and not have maybe those expectations from others that are bringing us down. They can't solve our problems. Guess what? We get to solve our own. So if you're in a relationship because you feel really like you want to have love in your relationship. And of course, that's what the movies is all about. And they really program us to look for love in everybody else around us. And are we going to find the right person? Are we going to find the right fellow to come along or the right woman to come along? I remember going to some classes, and this fellow was looking for the perfect woman. And I sat there and laughed. I knew he wasn't going to find her. Anyway, so if you're looking for nurturing, maybe you didn't get nurtured as a child, and so you're going to have to start learning to love yourself. Or if you're finding somebody that you have to latch onto like a barnacle so you'll be okay, and you can control them to do exactly what you want so you'll be safe, Well, maybe people you're going to have to learn how to be safe within your own skin and not worry about if somebody's there to be there for you or not. We have to be our own warrior champion and victory person. So, learning how we take care of ourselves is really important because that affects our relationships. I was in a relationship for survival. And of course, trying to survive in domestic violence as a child, I married somebody to save me as an adult. Ha ha, didn't work. Nobody can save me and nobody can make me happy. I have to save myself from my unhappiness, my ego, my lack of nurturing, all those things. I get to build up and find my own inner strength. And instead of look to others for that. So, if I'm looking for my stability from somebody else, in this case, especially emotional insecurity, which I think is a major problem with most people. With all the classes I've taught and all the counseling I've done, the common thread with everybody is emotional insecurity. We're looking for love, people, in all the wrong places. And our expectations bring that to highlight, and then we get upset, of course. So looking for love in all the wrong places, it's not outside of people. Your relationships aren't going to necessarily bring you love. They might bring you companionship and a pleasant experience to go on a trip with somebody, have a nice, happy dinner together and all those things. But what is love? We'll have to explore that maybe in another show. But you're looking for that love and nurturing that was missing in your life, most likely. And a lot of people marry out of fear. I know my mother did. It was during the Great Depression, and she had to be on her own and hadn't graduated from high school and was a nanny and went to a dance. She was trying to support herself by being a nanny and had to quit high school. And so money was a real big issue. She couldn't stay in the family because my grandmother was raising 8 children on her own. And so the family was put off into relatives' homes in various ways. And so financially, she wasn't able to really handle her life like she needed to be on her own. So guess what? She got married. And that financial insecurity that she was missing, my father had a job during the Depression. That was a prize. And it was a dependable job they could depend on. And so they got married, and of course, everyone thinks when you marry, you're going to live happily ever after. But if you get married for the wrong reasons, that happily ever after isn't likely to happen. And especially if it comes from fear. And we explored fear in one of our early radio shows and discovered we can't have faith and fear at the same time. So walking in faith is going to be the answer. We don't get married out of fear. We are safe within our hearts. That love has always been there and protects us and is there for us. So we don't have to be afraid. We can call on that courage inside, our confidence inside, our angels. We've had a program on angels. Call on your angels to help you when you feel insecure or not safe. So many of us, if we're feeling inadequate inside, we like to look good to others. So guess what? You go out and you're dating people and everything looks just hunky-dory on the surface. But, what's inside is the situation that you live with. It's not just the first date that everything went perfectly well and he was gloriously happy and you were having a terrific time and everything's going to come together wonderfully well. And it's what's on the inside. When you get together after a period of time, you have to live with the reality that you have been masking. So we're going to come back with some more problems with the relationships, but also the answers. So stay tuned. I'm Marilyn Redmond, listening to Love Never Fails. We are on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio for healthy relationships today. I'm your host, Marilyn Redmond. This is Love Never Fails. We're coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio, and we're talking about relationship tips today. And, we've always been taught, we get married and and to Prince Charming, and not everybody gets to move to England to Buckingham Palace like we've just had in the newspapers and all the media lately and become a princess and live happily ever after. Some of us have to stay here in the States and live realistically. And so, we have come from usually some kind of an environment where our needs weren't met. And we're looking for somebody to compensate for what's missing in our lives. And I didn't even know what a need was. I hate to admit this, but that's how naive I was growing up. My needs weren't met in my childhood and either my marriage. And when I joined a support group and spiritual groups, and someone said, you have to meet your own needs now, because I was on my own. And I looked at them and I says, what's a need? Well, I know today we have certain needs, and emotional needs is probably number one, and being nurtured. So I was looking for someone to take care of me. I really had never grown up, I discovered. And if you aren't nurtured and loved in a family that's not, if you have a family that's dysfunctional, you probably weren't loved. And that's what happened in my case. They really had not been loved by their parents, and they couldn't pass on what they didn't have. So I've had to learn to take care of myself and nurture myself. And I can't look for a mother or a father and a partner today. I have to grow up and be my own mother and my own father. It's even easy for little kids, when mom and dad go off for the evening, they have a babysitter come along. And so the babysitter takes care of their needs for the evening. Well, one partner to the other kind of could be a babysitter when you get older, but that's not going to work either. I think most of us have tried that along the way. And so we need to change and become a mature person. Without being nurtured, we never, in my case, didn't grow up. I didn't know how to be an equal among equals. I didn't know how to take responsibility because I wasn't old enough to take responsibilities. And so the family actually tried to have me take their responsibilities. They didn't want them, so they would push them off on me, but I didn't take care of my own. I always was taking care of my mother's responsibilities. And so when I had my husband, I didn't know how to hold on to doing my own responsibilities. And very, very early in my growing up and marriage, I had a car accident. Didn't even know it was called hit and run. I was in a parking lot, and I didn't think anybody saw it. And it was just a very kind of like a small dent kind of a thing. And I didn't take responsibility. Well, somebody did see it, and the police ended up at my front door. And guess what? I had my husband take care of it because I didn't know what to do. I was so naive in those days. Today I've had a few car accidents in my lifetime. In fact, I just had one last week. It was actually turned into a miracle. But I jumped out of the car, and I knew how to get the information to take care of it for insurances and how to get the quotes and estimates, and I'll do all the things you have to do for car accidents. So today I take responsibility, not just with car accidents, but with other parts of my life. And that helps me to grow up and be a better responsible person. And I had been looking for people to take care of me, and so I didn't have to do those things. But today I take care of them myself, and I don't have to push them off on a husband or a friend to do them for me. Today we've got some languages and semantics that have been changed in our culture, and we used to call it being a selfish person. I've discovered recently the current term is narcissist. And if a person is so focused on themselves and trying to survive and compensate for all those missing parts of their life, especially the loving and nurturing that was missing, or possibly financial parts that were missing, whatever that could be. Often security was missing, or very lonely, because if they were left on their own to play with themselves and didn't have any friends or neighbors, whatever. So people get pretty lonely, especially if you're an only child like I was. So you're looking for someone to fill all those empty parts. And thank goodness today I've learned how to change that. And believe it or not, when we did our Angels program a few weeks ago, the angels really do want you to ask for help. In this last car accident I actually prayed in the driveway before I took off that day, asked for the angels to put a bubble of protection around my car. Now, people, spirituality is so practical, and I asked for that protection. When I had that car accident and the guy was trying to get behind me in front of me in a hurry, he was buzzing down the road and there wasn't enough room and he scraped his car really bad and I thought he got the best of my car. We got out of the car and the ultimate result of the whole situation, his car was damaged, but the miracle was I did not have a scratch on I've just had the car 1 month, it's brand new. No scratches, 2 months old. 2 years old, but I've only had it a month. It's a used car. But I didn't have any scratches. Now, that's how practical taking care of ourselves can be. I walked away with a car not having a scratch on it, and the other fellow definitely had car damage. So you can see we can take care of ourselves not only in the typical way, but also spiritually. And it worked for me. Last week, I called it a miracle. The angels were definitely there taking care of me. So learning how to contribute in a relationship as partners and companions and friends and not using them has been a big eye-opening thing for me. I did a chart on myself as far as being in my marriage and discovered I was using him for emotional security as much as he was using me. And in doing that, I was being a good victim because I felt powerless and there was nothing good going on in my life. And I always thought that I didn't deserve good things. And so hopefully somebody would come into my life and make my life better. And so I used to tell people my life was terrible, horrible, and awful. And I definitely believed that myself. And then I read a book by Richard Bach. And in there was the quote, "Argue for your limitations and they are yours." So I learned to change the thinking in my head and the way I speak to myself so I don't argue for my limitations. And then several years later, I was watching a TV commercial one day, and Tina Turner was in the commercial, and her comment for that commercial was, "I don't limit myself anymore." And I had limited my life because I had only seen the very smallest parts come to me as a child and in my marriage, and I didn't think I deserved more. And today, that's, of course, a different story in my life. And so people, we can change our thinking, which we've talked about earlier, and you don't have to limit your life either. And if you're rescuing other people, come on back and we'll find out how to move out of that space. So I'm Marilyn Redmond. You're listening to Love Never Fails, and we are coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Stay tuned for more about relationships. I am Marilyn Redmond. This is Love Never Fails, and we're coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. And I want you to call in today, 866-451-1451, with your questions. Maybe it's about relationships, and maybe it's about something else. We're here to answer whatever questions you have. I've actually answered about 300,000 questions on an internet show that has all about questions. And so I've been doing this for 30 years now. So your question will not surprise anybody, especially me. We all have questions. And, the only question you don't ask is the one that isn't going to get answered. And everybody's going to want to know what the answer to that one is. So call in at 866-451-1451. And we're looking at ways we get into relationships. Usually our motives are not so wonderfully wonderful. And some of the movies have had some interesting titles. I think one was like 10 Ways to Lose Your Lover, or to break up a relationship or whatever. It was a really cute show with Kate Hudson. And she tried pulling all these different stunts to break up with this guy. We don't have to play these games. We just generally learn them. And I learned a lot of things that didn't work. And one of them was rescuing other people. And I've known a lot of women, especially, who like to rescue men. And I'll tell you, that is not the best way to get into a relationship. Two people that are in that situation, it is a game. And somebody's trying to fix the other person and make them okay. In my case, I When I heard my husband's childhood abuse problems from childhood, I thought, oh, I have enough love for both of us and I can fix him. And I spent 30 years trying to do that to no avail. If the other person doesn't want to change, there's nothing going to fix them. In fact, it's an inside job. He had to learn to fix himself, which in his case he couldn't do. So, that was called being a psychopath. So, when we are involved with other people thinking they're going to change, oh my, if you get married before the change has happened, stay away. The change isn't going to happen down the pike. However, if you find somebody who is also trying to grow and improve their lives past these old growing up problems where we were lacking in whatever was missing in our lives and looking for that compensation, and they're trying to improve their life and grow beyond it also, your growth will help give them the support to grow themselves, and then they can change. So the only way to change another person is for you to get healthier, and they'll follow suit because they feel comfortable enough to change. If you're doing it, it's safe for them too. I could go to work and I had all this false power. Being a teacher in the classroom, you could go in, shut the door, and I knew how to do the job. I'd been to college. I took the classes. I'd been the route of how to do whatever classwork we needed to do. So I looked good to a lot of people, and I acted very confident. And my examinations or evaluations, I guess you'd call them, always gave me excellent reviews. I never had a bad review, and I was in control at work. But that doesn't work in a marriage. I came home and I was not in control. I was not confident. And the power I had was actually no power at all, because what I did at work was a game. I had a mask on. I was playing the game of being a teacher, but it wasn't from being inside. So, if you're trying to rescue somebody or look good on the outside, and it's time to change that so we have integrity and we're coming from the inside out, we're actually doing what's true to us, and what they see is what they get. So I had to give up the game of blame, and I can't blame anybody today for my problems. If I'm pointing the finger at somebody, there's 3 fingers pointing back. So what I know today is that I have to say, if something out there isn't going well, what am I sending out to them that's coming back? And look for the source of my frustration. And it's not because somebody's treating me poorly. They're showing me where I still need to grow in that area of my life. So it's really interesting when somebody out there, I just talked to somebody recently and they said, well, this hurt me. And I says, well, if you have enough self-esteem, what they're talking about isn't going to be a problem, because people talk about themselves. It's not about you. And if you're letting it hurt you, then you are giving away your power, and you are not allowing yourself to be confident, whole, full of self-esteem. And they're actually talking about themselves, and it really shouldn't be a problem. I mentioned live and let live. We have our lives, they have theirs. And if I am a whole person, that person can go off and do what they have to do, say what they have to say. Hopefully it's not going to be harmful. But if it is, that's because they're hurting. And I don't have to take it personally. And that's been a huge change for me, to realize what other people do and say is not about me. It's about them. So I have got to give up the game of reacting. And I've had to learn to respond in a loving solution, and loving myself enough that I can do that. And I don't want to play the part of the victim anymore. And, if I give up playing my part, then the other person has to give up playing their part. So they're not going to play their victim part either. And the game is going to change. And sometimes your partner can't change, and sometimes they can. It's really kind of fun to see partners change. Society sets us up to play the game of the victim in a relationship. The story of Cinderella. She got married to the prince and lived happily ever after. And you've heard of the white knight in shining armor come along and saves the day with the damsel in distress. And of course, Superman saved the day, right? And in religions, there is a savior that's supposed to save the day. Well, if we look outside of ourselves for a savior, we can't save ourselves. It's called codependency. So save yourself. I'm Marilyn Redmond. You're listening to Love Never Fails and work on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. And stay tuned for more about relationships. I am Marilyn Redmond. You are listening to Love Never Fails. We are coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. And please call in if you have a question or a concern about relationships or any other thoughts on your mind today. 866-451-1451. We'd love to hear from you. I'm sure you have some thoughts, your experience in your life. Maybe something is going poorly or maybe it's going really well, and you could share that with us too. So we want to hear some answers that work. Since I was in a relationship that didn't work, I've learned a lot of things that I had to become what I wanted in my partner. I was on a trip to Australia and met a couple that I didn't think would normally be a couple, and turned out that I said, how'd you get together? And she told me, and she'd made a list of what the qualities were in a person that she was looking for. So when I came home from that trip, I made my list of what qualities I was looking for. And I'd been screaming prior to that. I sometimes get kind of upset at God, and I scream to the ceiling. I says, God, don't put me in another battering and abusive marriage of rape. And the voice came back to me and said, well, Marilyn, you're going to have to become the qualities and characteristics you want in your partner. So that meant I had to make a list like this lady had done. And on my list, I put spirituality, honesty, sincerity, integrity, loyalty, and trustworthy. And I started out to try to apply those into my life. And I had a list from Galatians in the Bible that's the fruits of the Spirit. And I tried to take one each week and apply it in my life. And lo and behold, guess what? I started feeling better. And so as I was changing, I've discovered I was actually trying to employ reality into my life. I was releasing the old qualities that didn't work, and I was replacing it with what did. So instead of poking the finger at somebody else, I now say, okay, what am I sending out that is not coming back to me? What goes around comes around. That's what's a favorite saying to a lot of people recently. It's actually a universal law that what you send out comes back to you. You become a magnet. So the more you send out love to that other person, then it's going to come back to you. It's what can you contribute to the relationship that comes back, and you then feel better. God is energy in expansion. And when you're sharing your love with somebody else, when you've released all the unloving things inside from your past, and now you have a clean slate to send out new loving actions, thoughts, words, and deeds to others, that's going to magnify, it's going to grow, and you're going to feel good. And when that can happen, that's a really good relationship. You're free to be yourself. You're free to participate and to handle things in a way that's productive and share with that person whatever you can. So the more you share, the more good you'll feel. And that's how you make yourself happy. It's not about the other person making you happy. When I answer all these questions on the internet, people will say, well, how can I be happy? And of course, the simple answer is to release your ego. Ego, some people say, is edging God out. Well, God is love. So if you don't put love into your relationship, it isn't going to come back. So when you send love out, that's what comes back, and that's what makes you happy. That's what makes you feel good. And it's my job to do it. It's not somebody's job to make me feel good. And so I was always looking, as I said earlier, for love in all the wrong places. And that's how I saved myself. I saved myself from my ego telling me all the negative behaviors and thoughts and ideas that are actually negative and work against me. Nobody can save me and nobody can give me peace. It's an inside job. So I have to accept others as they are. Oh my, that can be a challenge. You don't have to agree with them. You just have to accept that that's the way they are. I have a friend who is quite a procrastinator. Well, I've just accepted that's how it works for that person. And I still go about trying to stay current every day. What do I have to do right now? And take care of what still needs to be finished so I can be present in the now. I don't choose to let the past hang on and hang on and hang on and drain my energy and keep me from being where I want to be, and that is happy. So get your unfinished business taken care of. That's one way to help make your life better. What is my part in being responsible? I respond in a loving solution. Instead of reacting to those people around me, I get to respond in love. If they're sending out messages that are affecting me poorly, they're wounded. They're sending out their pain. And the answer to pain is always love. You know, the program is love never fails. Love will heal the wounds of yourself and other people. Love is like a glue. And those parts of us that are wounded have to be healed in that love. And only you and your higher power can put that glue back together and make it come into being a whole person again. And then you respond as a responsible person. So changing your attitudes and beliefs, which we've talked about earlier in this show, and your behaviors, and then you look to yourself for what's the next right indicated thing I have to do. And it's not reacting to what your partner says or does, unless it's appropriate, but it's responding to what is necessary for you to keep your life intact, and that you care for yourself, you respect yourself, you're doing the important things for you to take care of you. And you look into your heart and see if, it makes you feel good. When my little girl sometimes gets a little upset or worried or whatever the problem is, and it's kind of like that little girl inside of me needs some attention. And it's not for my partner necessarily to give me that attention. You know what I do, people? I have a box of ice cream cones in my freezer. And when my little girl inside wants some attention or is upset or wants to get a moment of just let's sit down and not have to be so busy right now, and I'll go get an ice cream cone. So my little girl inside knows she's loved and taken care of, and it's going to be okay, and things will work out. So take care of yourself. That's the answer in a relationship. And, sometimes people in our relationships will look at something and think it's just terrible. And you'll look at it and think, well, what are they seeing? And it reminds me of a story about the tie. And this man put on a brand new tie, walked into the room with his friends. And this one person said, oh, that's the worst tie I've ever seen. It's ugly. The colors are terrible. I wouldn't wear that tie to a dog fight. And then another person came up to him and said, a few minutes later, oh, where did you get that terrific tie? That is really attractive, and it looks really super. And, I'd love to get a tie like that. Where'd you find that tie? Well, it's the same tie, people. It's just your perception. So maybe your partner has a different perception. You like the tie and they don't. It's the same tie. It's just your opinion. And nobody has the same opinion as you, so don't let them bring your opinion down. Stay tuned for some more solutions to resolutions for relationships. This is Love Never Fails with Marilyn Redmond, your host, and we are coming to you live on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. I am Marilyn Redmond. You are listening to Love Never Fails, and we are on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio talking about relationships. Call in 866-451-1451 and find out whatever answers you need today that you might not have thought about. Sometimes our partners need space, and to give that person a chance to say, I need to take a little break right now or a little time out is very respectful. And so often, especially wives, I think, try to smother their husbands because we're so needy at times, and we don't want to give them a chance to have a breather. And so step back when they say, I need space, and just say, gee, now I get to go I got to practice my piano. I get to go crochet. I get to go read a book. Guess what? Go have a good time, do what you need to do, and I'll see you in a bit. This really works well. But people also need space for venting their feelings. And if they don't have friends or a counselor where they can go, sometimes it just pops out when you're there. My friend got really upset one time as we were heading off to visit a person, and we'd forgotten the map and had to head back home to get the map to the right exit that we needed to get off at to go to the nursing home. And then the car broke down. And so he's upset because the car wouldn't start. And then something, I can't remember the third thing that happened. And so all of a sudden, these three things happened all at once. And he had to get under the car to get it going. And he was not a very happy camper. And he stood outside the car and threw this temper tantrum, just like a 5-year-old. I mean, I sat there just kind of laughing inside. It didn't go his way. We were in the car just dashing off to see our friend. And so I just sat there and realized he's upset. It didn't go well. And I just sat there and let him have his temper tantrum. Didn't say a word. He got in the car. We drove off. About 5 minutes later, he apologized for his temper, which he is very good at that. He takes responsibility for his feelings. And it didn't affect me or bother me because I knew it was all about him. It wasn't anything I did. So, and it didn't have to spoil the rest of the evening, but he got it out of his system, and the rest, we've never talked about it. It's never been a problem. He just had to have that chance to explode, and he did, and we went. So, giving people a chance to be themselves, maybe your tempers come out at some point and someone gave you the opportunity to say, it's okay. You just let them have that opportunity and you move on. It's not about hurting anybody. It's just needed to happen at the time. So we accept people and we're tolerant of them. And so when we love them and we just let them be themselves, the rest comes together. We're not trying to change them or control or manipulate them. Love is the magic wand, and it does glue us back together when we're giving and contributing to that relationship in loving ways. So you don't look for answers outside. And of course, meditation is one way to find your answers and direction within. Opening up your heart and letting that love fill you, and then sharing it with your partner. That's what brings you together. That's the love. That's the glue. That's what real love is. It's an energy. And so it's an energy that glues us together emotionally. And letting him have his temper tantrum, or giving somebody space to have a chance to pull themselves together in whatever way they needed. Those are loving acts. Listening to people say what they have to say. Those are loving ways to pull yourself together and be a partner. And, then all of a sudden you feel much closer. I project what I am. So I have to be that person I want the other person to be. So if I'm careful with being kind and caring, respectful, doing the things I want, the old golden rule, do unto others as you would like others do unto you. So you give it out and it comes back, and you respond in love, and you do something nice for someone and you don't get caught. Now that's a real challenge sometimes, but it's easy to do if you are thinking about it. And the other day, something came up in my life, and somebody needed something from the grocery store, and I was heading off to the grocery store. And with my arthritis, it's hard to get around the store. So I really didn't plan on just purposely going over and picking up what she needed. But guess what? What I needed was right in the same shelf. So I picked up what she needed and brought it home, and I couldn't get it to her myself. So her friend was with me 2 days later and took it to her. I obviously in this case, she knew where it came from, but it was a gesture to help somebody. And that's love when you're doing that kind of thing. So telling the truth, be independent, total responsibility for every part of your life. And having your feelings is really important because if you stuff them, you can't be emotionally connected. So being open and honest and vulnerable and taking responsibility for whatever your part of the argument is. And if you're in conflict and somebody's needs aren't being met. And so when you do these things, you're going to find happiness, success inside. And you're going to be finding out, oh, I should have apologized in this situation, and you take responsibility for it. And that's what you need to do. It's okay to not be perfect. I had to learn not to be perfect. That's another story. So just realize that, we're growing up, people, and it's not necessarily easy to grow up. So we quit looking outside of ourselves for answers and take care of ourselves. And we're rescuing ourselves because it's an inside job with love, honor, respect, and support yourself. And then that will be shared with your partner because life is an adventure. And when you change your attitude from getting to giving, my, will things change. Most of us get married for what we can get. You've heard of the gold diggers. And I just read in the media about a particular gal married this fellow, and he was a multimillionaire. Turns out she was after his money. She wasn't what it was she could contribute. It was what could she get. Those kind of things lead us down the path and cause more trouble than we want. So if life's an adventure and I can contribute to it and I can just be myself, I don't have to be perfect. I can forget the past and just right now be the best person I can be. There is a really neat poem I want to share with you when we come back that'll help you understand this, so don't go away. I'm Marilyn Redmond. You're listening to Love Never Fails, and we're coming to you live on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. I am your host, Marilyn Redmond, and this is Love Never Fails. We are on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. And if you haven't called yet, there's a little bit of time, 866-451-1451. We'd be so glad to hear from you. And as I promised when we took the last break, there was going to be something that I think is very special. And it's called the Serenity Prayer. And if you haven't heard of it, I hope today that you'll really take it under your advisement to practice it in all your affairs. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And what that means is I can accept the serenity to accept the things I can't change, which is my partner. So many people go into marriage thinking I'm going to change my partner, especially the gals. I think the gals have this idea of the perfect man and what's going to make you happy and what's going to bring life into be wonderful ever after. Don't go into a relationship with what you're going to change, people. The only thing you can change is you, and that's the next part. The courage to change the things I can only change myself. I can be the person I want my partner to be. I can model that. I can send love. I can contribute. I can be a better person. I can be caring and kind instead of judgmental and critical. I can find what's right with that person instead of what's wrong with that person. I can change to be a better person. And people, it's called growing up. It's called becoming mature. In the Bible, it's called being a Christed being, a new creature, because we're sending out love instead of the fear we were raised with. So when we become that loving person, you're going to change. And the wisdom to know the difference is it's all about you. It's never been about your partner. Oh my, what a new understanding. I'm the one that needs to change, and my reality and my relationship can just get better every time I get better. Wow, I am responsible for my reality, and I have the ability to do that. So I'm always looking for the loving response of how to handle a situation. And so I don't always have to be right today. I'd rather be happy. And it's not about getting. It's about giving, because what I give out comes back. It goes around. It's gonna come around. So we want you to know that next week we're going to have a program about the supporting prisons, and we're going to be glad to be here, that you're going to be listening again to Love Never Fails. Remember, I do readings, counseling, and past life regressions. Check out my website at angelicasgifts.com. And tune in next week about supporting inmates in prison. They can change their lives to be better, and you can help support them do that. That's a relationship you can really help change our world and society. When people say we want peace on earth, that's a way to do it. So tune in next week and be in joy, gratitude, and the presence of love, feeling good in reality. I'm Marilyn Redmond. You are listening to Love Never Fails every Tuesday afternoon. We are coming to you on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. See you next time.
You've been listening to Love Never Fails with your host, Marilyn Redmond. Go beyond old ideas and understandings and hear Marilyn's solutions to healing and a higher consciousness. Each week, here on Marilyn Redmond's Love Never Fails.